in a beautiful land torn by decades of brutal civil war, where natural resources promise untold wealth for the few and deprivation for the many. Who will enter the battle zone on the side of the defenseless? Who will dare to offer a path to peace in a broken land? Only those with the courage of their convictions.
I am a Christian peacemaker rather than a secular peacemaker, because Jesus taught us that God has a dream for humanity. It's called God's kingdom, and we are invited to enter that dream and to do what we can to bring it about.
An ordained Basilian priest, Father Bob Holmes provides pastoral support for an organization called Christian Peacemaker Teams.
Our motto is getting in the way, and it is a double meaning. The first Christians called themselves the Way, Jesus' Way. But getting in the way also means getting in the way of violence.
Supported solely by donations, Peacemaker Teams get in the way in conflict zones around the world.
Somehow, the presence of international peacemakers reduces the violence. And our presence is not just our physical presence, it's our cameras, it's our ability to report and to tell the stories, to shine a light on the violence when people don't want people to know about the violence.
CPT members pledge never to resort to violence themselves, even if their lives are threatened.
We've always known we risked being kidnapped. We've always known we risked dying, that we were willing to risk our lives for peace.
In Iraq, in 2005, that willingness was tested.
The abduction of our peacemakers, Jim Loney and Tom Fox and Norman Kember and Harmeet Sudin last November, had a profound effect on peacemakers around the world. All of a sudden, it was very real, the risks we take.
CPT members use the media spotlight to make impassioned appeals.
We're a small group, and we can only do a little bit of peacemaking in a few places. But sometimes our voice gets quite loud.
After 118 days, 3 of the peacemakers were discovered and freed by U.S. and British forces. But one of their number was found dead, with marks suggesting torture.
Tom Fox, the one who was killed in Iraq, was a good friend. I worked with him on team in Iraq, and he was a Quaker, and he really believed in the light. I led the delegation to Iraq a month before Jim Loney led his. It could just as easily have been my delegation.
Four years before his mission to Iraq, Father Bob and a peacemaker team traveled to Colombia at the request of the Colombian Mennonite Church to help the people of the Opon River Valley. For countless generations, people have fished the river and farmed its banks, their lives untouched by the wider world. Then, in the 1980s, international corporations arrived to exploit the valley's rich natural resources. A new gas pipeline became a target for communist guerrillas, making the valley a battleground in Colombia's long-running civil war. Mercenaries, called paramilitaries, were paid by corporate interests to protect the pipeline by any means necessary.
Paramilitary groups have been used to basically to cleanse areas. It's horrible. They're groups that are not accountable to the government, and therefore the government can say, well, that's not us. And what they'll do is they'll kill someone to set an example and say, anybody that we think is supporting the guerrillas, we'll kill them. And I have to tell you, though, that the guerrillas will come through, and anybody they think is supporting the Colombian army, they'll kill. So it works both ways.
After grisly killings of community leaders, their wives and children, more than 200 families fled to the nearby city of Barranca, living in filthy accommodations and destitute, they soon became desperate to return to their land. David, a community leader, recalls what happened next.
Some of them came back, like to check the animals and things that they have here. So, but there were some helicopters like shooting, and they couldn't come back again.
In Colombia, only the Air Force owns helicopters, suggesting that forced relocation is part of the Colombian government's plan for economic development.
It's a plan which will make some people in Colombia quite rich, but it's a plan which will also impoverish the people who live on the land, who will be displaced in order for these resources to be taken.
Shortly after their arrival, the Christian peacemakers convened a meeting with the displaced families.
We asked them, what would it take for you to go back? And they said, well, maybe if you went back with us, they wouldn't threaten us if you were there.
The team offered to put themselves in the way of violence from any side.
We got ourselves a CPT canoe with a flag that says ACAP on it, and we went back, and several families went back. It took quite a risk for David and his family, Juan and Mariana, and the first 10 families that went back.
As a fragile peace takes hold, Father Bob is called away to hotter conflict zones. He visits teams in Palestine, on the U.S.-Mexico border, and in Iraq. Today, Father Bob returns to the Opon River to discover how the people have fared, accompanied by fellow team member Noah Dillard. He speaks to David.
The role that CPT has played in this region has been huge. They're one of the only NGOs that comes to this region that pays attention to the small farmers that are here, and that means a great deal. But they have also been involved in really confronting the armed groups in this region, and the paramilitary captured a guerrilla, and the guerrilla signaled somebody out in the community up in Los Nieques, pointed them out as having helped him before. And so the paramilitaries were going to this person's house, and thanks to God, CPT was there, and they put themselves in the middle of it, and the person wasn't killed.
Father Bob learns that, inspired by the bravery of the Christian peacemaker teams, 90 families have returned to their land.
I'm really proud that CPT is able to work with a community that's so well organized and willing to take the risks needed to bring about peace.
Willing to take risks, but still in need of the CPT presence. When Father Bob arrives at the team's base in Barranca, he hears disturbing news.
Several of the houses are empty right now, which means there have been people displaced whose lives have been threatened, who have decided it's safer to move somewhere else. There was someone killed earlier in the summer that was well known in the community.
He learns the community plans to discuss the situation tomorrow at a public meeting on an island far upriver. If paramilitaries or guerrillas try to break up the meeting, Father Bob is determined to get in the way. He prepares the team for the river journey with a passage from the Gospel of Mark.
A great gale arose, and waves beat into the boat, but Jesus was in the stern, asleep, on a cushion. So they woke him up and they said, "Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing?" And he woke up, and he rebuked the wind, and he said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. And he said to them, "Why were you afraid? Had you still no faith?" And they were filled with awe, and they said to one another, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obeys him?" And I think when Jesus says, "Why were you afraid?" the thought ought to be, we shouldn't be afraid because look who's in the boat with us.
At dawn, Father Bob will travel troubled waters of a different kind, where men with guns are known to lie in wait. He prays Jesus will be with him then. In a remote region of Colombia, new economic development threatens to displace the farmers and fisherfolk of the Opon River Valley. This morning, Father Bob Holmes and fellow Christian peacemaker Noah Dillard prepare to travel by boat to a public meeting. They hope their presence will provide protection from corporate-supported paramilitaries and communist guerrillas. The team's shoestring budget can only cover the cost of an aging outboard-powered canoe. They hope the craft is up to the journey. Though a medical condition makes river travel difficult for Noah, he has volunteered to go along.
I met Noah last year, spent some time with him here in Barranca. He's unique and brings a very different flavor to the peacemaking.
Only 27, Noah is already a veteran of CPT missions and spent 3 years in Iraq before coming to Colombia.
So I would say that my idealism has really shifted. I think that I no longer do this work for necessarily the long-term victory. I do this work much more out of a belief that life is sacred.
Evidence of massive new development soon comes into view.
One of the big things in this area is gasoline. This is, you saw Barranca, the big refinery there. There's a gas line that comes from there that goes right close by here, about maybe 3 or 4 miles from here.
In the strong current, no watercraft can get far without a powerful engine. Gasoline sustains life on the river and fuels conflict.
There's a gas cartel, which is protected by the paramilitaries, that taps into that gas line and then takes it right back to Barranca and sells it, and uses that money to fund their own activities.
The guerrillas steal the same gasoline to fund their insurgency.
Stolen gasoline at that waterfront is everywhere.
After purchasing gasoline, Noah is careful to save the receipt. That's because the ever-present military patrols assume that those without a receipt have purchased their gas from the guerrillas. Those without receipts are detained, assaulted, or even, in some cases, disappeared.
Stand down, stand down.
Neither Father Bob nor Noah want to give the military any excuse to disappear them.
It's the way you send a threat to the communities. You put a body in the river, and then the people in the community were told, don't take the bodies out of the river, or you'll be the next body in. So they would call us, and we would be the ones who would go and recover the bodies. Peace of mind in the face of violence is not always easy. You have to learn to disarm your own heart. Doesn't sound like it's got power.
Less than a mile upriver, the outboard engine falters. Father Bob and Noah try to take it in stride.
No, it sure doesn't.
Yep, that's what it is. Guy over on the shore is saying the business spark plug.
The timing of this breakdown couldn't be worse.
We got a paddle? We usually bring one.
We have a paddle.
Okay. We just might need it soon.
If the team fails to arrive at the public meeting and guerrillas or paramilitaries show up, there will be no one to get in the way to protect innocent lives.
Just gotta get to the gas station.
A spark plug could mean the difference between life and death.
Not far. We may end up back down there.
For help, Noah reaches out to one of his many local contacts.
Fortunately, we have a very capable motorist who was contracted by the community, who knows all about motors and oftentimes is able to fix them quickly.
With a new, or at least newer, spark plug, the outboard roars back to life, and the team heads back upriver. They spot something that wasn't there earlier in the day.
Okay, this is a checkpoint we're coming to. And it's a Navy checkpoint. This is where we may need the letter I'm carrying. That's a roving checkpoint. I mean, that checkpoint's not always there.
The armed men wear uniforms of the Colombian military. No friend to those who help local people stay on their land.
One thing that we find very quickly working in situations of lethal violence and war, that you really have to be prepared for anything to happen.
In a remote region of Colombia, a mission of peace is impeded by the Colombian military.
Okay, this is a checkpoint we're coming to. And it's a Navy checkpoint. This is where we may need the letter I'm carrying.
To avoid antagonizing the soldiers, the camera operator lowers his camera, but keeps filming.
They were checking what was in the boat, who was in the boat. They were making sure that the gasoline we bought had been bought legally, because there's a whole cartel selling illegally stolen gasoline.
Do you have the receipt for the...
For the gasoline?
Yeah.
See.
Without the receipt, the team will be delayed, or worse.
So somehow you have to say, yes, I have a very good reason for being afraid. But fear will not help. And so I have to let go of my fear.
After seconds that seem like hours, Noah finds the receipt and the soldiers wave them on. Beyond the checkpoint, their camera records more armed men in the jungle. Father Bob believes the receipt wasn't the only reason the soldiers let them pass.
The Colombian Army, the Colombian Navy, the paramilitaries, or the guerrillas don't want to be on camera. Oh, the camera and the cell phone are lifesavers. They save lives.
Delays threaten to make the team very late for today's public meeting. Pushing the old outboard as hard as they dare, they race upriver, passing the homesteads of those they helped return to the valley.
This is the point. And that's a new hut. That wasn't there 2 years ago.
I mean, I think it's somebody's fishing shack.
Wow. They want to be here and be fisher folk and plant their crops and raise their animals, and to do that in peace. And so that's what we're hoping for. And so our presence here makes it a little easier for that to happen. It doesn't mean they don't get threatened. It doesn't mean that people still don't get killed.
I get feedback from a lot of people telling me how brave and courageous I must be. But I believe that the people who are really brave and courageous are those people who continue to live their lives, continue to reach for their own humanity, and live in the midst of this warfare.
Father Bob senses they are nearing the meeting place at last.
You're looking more familiar now. It all looks the same though, doesn't it?
But the river has branched into several confusing channels.
Now, I think this is where we both thought we were before. And I think this is the exit to the Magdalena Media.
Around the next bend, their destination comes into view. As the helmsman cuts the engine, Father Bob and Noah expect to hear sounds of a public meeting in progress, but the island is silent. A young boy stands on the shore, all alone. In a remote river valley in Colombia, members of a Christian Peacemaker team land at the site of a public meeting. By their presence, they hope to protect the participants from guerrillas and paramilitaries. But there is no meeting in progress. In this conflict zone, this is ominous.
Buenas tardes. Me llamo Roberto. Sí.
They discover one very nervous woman. Noah asks the woman if she minds being on camera, which she does.
You might want to ask her if she's okay with the film.
Pues sí, entonces nosotros, usted sabía que el grupo iba a filmar, iba a grabar.
They were waiting here for us and gave up. And she is not, or is not willing to.
Well, she's not feeling very prepared.
Right, okay, very good.
She's saying that so everybody, she's here alone.
The question is, what happened before the meeting broke up? Speaking to the woman off camera, Father Bob discovers the answer.
We were an hour and a half late getting there, and the people who were going to speak to us couldn't wait, and so they moved on. Yes, there were armed actors in the area. We didn't see them, but we were told that they had been in the area. The guerrillas don't want to be seen, so they very seldom allow us to see them.
Father Bob suspects the guerrillas are nearby, even now, and that's why the woman is so nervous. Noah feels they should leave. She might feel safer that way. Perhaps she wishes they had never come. But then, a parting gift suggests otherwise.
Oh, shukran. I'll pass them in.
Esteban y Afonso, listo. Bueno.
Noah takes all of today's setbacks as a spiritual opportunity.
I think that situations like this just remind us that we have to reflect and take a breath and step back and just have faith in the workings of all this.
A quick check with community leaders confirms that today's public meeting was not marred by violence. Perhaps God was not in their boat today because he was at the meeting instead.
I think of our work, and we're always in a storm. It seems we look for storms, that's where we work. And we work as a team, so we work in a boat. And the boat's always rocking, and we're always figuring it's sinking. It seems it's perennially we're bailing this boat.
The pastoral support that people like Bob give us really enables us to live in these dark times, recognizing that we are not alone, that we are not forgotten, that indeed God never abandons us.
We have to really believe that Jesus is in the boat with us. And therefore we dare go into a war zone and say, peace be still.
My dream for this region is to have it be like it was back when I was a child. When I was a child, you could leave for wherever you wanted and do so really in peace, and nobody would bother you.
The Christian Peacemaker teams pledge to stand with the people of the Opon Valley until their dream comes true.